Let's talk about the most recent thing that happened at the hospital and the levy. There was a recent levy that passed. What are your thoughts about the levy?
My feeling is that this is a public hospital. They already received taxpayer funding, and they had actually received a big USDA loan to fund the hospital. So I was very confused when a levy was put forward. Other than that, to my understanding, the maximal price was higher than the loan they had received from the federal government, and so then they turned to the community. I feel that if we had better worked our financial situation and taken into account a lot of different factors, we wouldn't be at this levy point today. My belief is in fiscal conservatism. I like that we take account of what we need to be doing and accurately represent ourselves, such that we have supervision over what's going on. We need to be able to make good decisions and try to inform our constituents of what was going on. And I feel like it was a vote of, if you're not for the levy, you're against a new hospital. And I feel like that's not the appropriate light to shine on that problem.
Yeah, I'm with you. Well, first of all, I don't believe in any levy or any bond, and I'm kind of the guy. You're going to laugh at this, but I'm kind of the guy that believes that taxation is theft. So, which if it's not voluntary, if somebody's taking my money non-voluntarily, it is theft per definition. I'm not saying taxes aren't needed, but my thing with levies and bonds is it's just never enough. And I think this hospital levy is a perfect example. They already have, especially when you compare them to other taxing districts, whether it be the fire district, whether it be, let's just say a minimal, junior taxing district like the mosquito district.
Or Quincy Public Hospital that's not requiring a public levy to build
right.
a facility.
And compare Quincy to Samaritan. And most public hospitals, especially Samaritan, I've been on the board of Samaritan, most of their income is fee driven, not taxpayer support from property tax. So most of their money comes from fees. So why do they need a levy to build a hospital is unbelievable to me. And I think it's just because they squander their money like a lot of public hospitals do, like a lot of public entities do. They just squandered their money.
It's like the federal government spent a lot of time in the Army, and as the budget year would roll around, fiscal year comes to an end, everybody would try to spend their money so they got the same thing next year. They wouldn't try to conserve things. It was just all about spending what was available. Otherwise, you get less next year. So I think we just need to have better oversight. Oversight is the key. People need to ask appropriate questions, and if you don't know the questions to ask, you've got to, seek input from the outside. Try to inform yourself better about what you're voting on and whether these decisions make sense. And too frequently, I think that it's just a all or nothing. We just, walk along and give the answer of yes, because, again, it's that same thing back to the whole thing with the levy. If you're not for the agenda, then you're against the hospital. And I think you can be for the hospital and not give a yes answer every time to every request.
Well, I think, in 1999, I was actually elected as commissioner of public hospital, and we went through a lot of changes, good changes, I think. And one of the things that was talked about is the administration talked about not wanting people on the board that had an agenda. And my thought about that is don't you want people on the hospital commission that have an agenda? Let's say you.
I don't think you can ever operate in a vacuum. One person's ideas need to be questioned at all times. We need to take different approaches to the problem and try to figure out what the best solution is. If you don't have a sounding board for your ideas, you can't go to somebody and actually say, okay, well, what are your thoughts? What are you trying to accomplish? What do you think this community needs? It doesn't all need to be just driven by one opinion followed by 5 yeses.
Now, I have another question for you. So what are your thoughts? I think, some people think that when you are elected to a public hospital commission that you represent administration or even the hospital. And really, you don't represent the hospital. You represent the taxpayers because that's who elected you.
Yes.
Do you want to expand on that?
So I think you need to be responsible to the community members that elect you. You shouldn't be responsible to the administration. The administration should work for the community, and the community should elect the commissioners to basically hold the hospital accountable.
Yeah, absolutely. I know when there's an organizational chart floating around the hospital 20 years ago when I was on the board, I made sure that they put on that organizational chart taxpayers at the top. It goes taxpayers, board of commissioners, administration, and then that organizational chart on down. And it's important in a public entity that people realize that it's the taxpayers that should be driving things. And if things aren't going right from the taxpayers, if the taxpayers didn't like the levy, then they need to elect new commissioners so they can and the commissioners can actually drive who the administration is.